Hello and welcome to a quick demo of HEAVYPAINT. So on the top you have a bunch of tools. Here's our fill tool, which is F. You can click on the different tools and see what they're called up on the top right. So rectangle tool looks like that. Chisel is like that. Line tool is like this. But let's go back to fill tool for a second. And you might think, what are these random colors happening everywhere? So this is sort of a main feature of HEAVYPAINT where every tool has color jitter, and that color jitter is exposed up here in this knob on the top. So the way the knobs work is you just drag from the center outwards, so you can drag in any direction and it'll just follow the direction that you drag. So if I go all the way up, this is going to look like a clown fiesta, and then if we go all the way down, there's no color jitter. Alright, and on top of that, these knobs can be clicked on to get extra options. So since this is the color jitter knob, we have different options for how the color jitter is applied. So we can say per stroke, and now, I don't know if you can see that, but each stroke gets its own unique color. And then we can say stroke point, and that's going to combine the two options. So per point on the stroke and per stroke together. Okay, so let's try some other tools. What about P for pencil? There it is. Maybe this looks better with black. And then what about we already did line tool. What about fill gradient? This is kind of a unique tool. It's nice for shadows and big gradients. We have a rake tool. This is nice for kind of like a halftone pattern or shading texture. And then here's a blur. I'll go really big on the blur. Nice soft blur. And then we've got mix. This is kind of an interesting tool. It's going to blend from the first point of our stroke all the way to the last point. Let me make this bigger. So from here I'm going to start. It's going to pick up that first color, and then as I drag along, it's just going to blend directly to whatever the last color is. So for example, if we have red and blue, we want to blend, with mix like that. Okay, and then next we got smudge. Very pretty. And then we can bring the noise size way down low, and this will give you more like a waterfall, liquidy kind of effect. And then we can go really high, and that's a really fine bristle brush. Okay, and then what else do we have? Erase, something like that. Stencil mode. So let me go back to chisel and start drawing, and you can see that stencil mode just makes it so that you're only drawing on the pixels that are already there. Okay, and then let me turn off stencil. Eyedropper, pretty self-explanatory. It just lets you pick a color that's under your mouse. So you click on the eyedropper and then click again to choose the color. And then undo, redo. What else? We can grab this bar and move it around by grabbing the top middle of it. On the bottom right, there's a control for resizing. You can make it vertical like this, move it from side to side. You can make it really wide. You can stretch it out however you want. Okay, and then also we've got we've been playing with this size knob, and you just slice from the center outwards to pick your size, and you can also click on the line if you want. But what else do we have? We know that clicking on a knob gives you extra options, so let me click on the size knob. So we're on pressure now. What about distance? How does that look? Ooh, weird. So this will, taper towards the end. None will just give you no size control. It just directly takes this size. This one, what is this? Rotation. Okay. So if I rotate it like that, now my tool is going to go in that direction. If I rotate it like that, it'll go that direction. You can click on it. There's different options here. They're kind of crazy, but for most of the time you're going to use follow or none. This is just a regular follow or none. Just for fun, let's try follow last. Woo! Okay. Now, where it gets interesting is if you click on a tool that's already selected. So for example, we have chisel already selected. So if I click on it again, I get a more detailed view of all the settings that we can use to make a custom tool. So this is the texture that we're using on our chisel brush. We can change it to, let's say, this old painting I did. You can import any PNG image here as a texture by just clicking up here and then import texture. So this is an old painting here. Let me try that one. Okay, so here's my old painting. It looks a little bit weird because the way that we're mapping the texture is randomly to give us like a random texture to it. So if I go back in here and say turn off random map, this is going to give us like a one-to-one mapping of the texture. Except, also the stretch here, this is texture stretching. So right now you can see we're only using about 10% of the middle of the texture. We're kind of like cropping in on the middle of the texture with this stretch setting. So I can make it 100% stretch to use the entire full length of the texture, and then you get this. Okay, and you can see that it's tinted with the current color. So let's say we go to white. You can see it's tinted. Let me turn down color jitter. It's tinted, but it's a little bit washed out, right? It's a little washed out white. So let me go back in there and play with this texture saturation setting. So if I go all the way up, this is going to be full saturation of that texture. And if I go all the way towards the bottom, it's going to be very, very slightly saturated. And you can turn that off, of course. And the reason why this is nice is if you have some texture that has an alpha channel to it, like one of these, then you can basically turn off the color of the texture if you want, or turn it back on. And you can see there's sort of a slight texture in a slight color in some of these textures. Okay, and then aside from that, there's a bunch of tool presets here, which are really just combinations of these settings here. So you can change these up or even make your own tools by just clicking up here and saying new. There's stuff like here. Let's try circle tool. There's all sorts of weird tools in here. Fill lasso. This one lets you do concave shapes like that, where you cut back into the shape, or where the shape like cuts into itself like that. And then this shape setting here kind of lets you choose between different tool types, I guess. So like, for example, repeat will look like that. Let's try it, putting in an actual texture. Turn off random map. Okay. And then you can also play with the smoothing. This will just give you, make the stroke smoother. So let me crank this up to 3. Let's try circle. And there's another option here called smooth color that will get the color jitter and blend it out like that. That's what you're into. But anyway, that's the tool system basically. You can also go up to the top left here for extra options. You can set your UI color, set your accent color. There are options for lefty and righty mode. You can turn off layers, turn on layers. Black and white mode is this little dot over here on the top. You have a timer. Click on that. Get yourself going for, figure drawing session or whatever. And we also have different color choosers. So we're on box mode now. This is RGB sliders, and this is HSV sliders. Okay, and then finally, the last thing you need to know is this little sketchbook icon on the top. This probably will be on the other side if you're on ready mode. But you click on the sketchbook icon and you get this interface here. Let's try stats. This gives us some info about our painting, what tools we're using, the value range of our strokes, how many undos per stroke, blah, blah, blah. We've got these two arrows that let you flip between different pages. So here we can see an old painting we did a couple minutes ago. And you can also see that it replays the painting here for you with this little pie. So if you want to skip the replay, feeling impatient, just click on the pie. It's going to fast load it. Okay, and then one other thing too, which I'll quickly go over, is layers are over here. You can hit the plus button to make a new layer. And let's just quickly make a new layer and one more layer. And let's click on this top layer and say clip down. That's going to make it so that this layer is stuck to the bottom layer. You can click on this button here to transform it. You can also do fancy stuff like turn on mirroring. And yeah, I think that's most of the goods here. You can finally, the last thing I'll go over is resizing the canvas is kind of cool in HEAVYPAINT, because when we resize, we have the ability to change the resolution either higher or lower with no loss in quality. So we can go ×2, for example, and say okay. And it's going to actually rebuild the entire canvas from scratch, because HEAVYPAINT uses sort of, you can think of it like vector points. It stores all the points in the stroke, so the resolution doesn't really matter. You can make it small, make it big, make it back to small, and there is no loss in quality. So that's kind of cool if you're into printing out your work high res. Okay guys, that's the overview of HEAVYPAINT. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, you can message me on Twitter or Instagram @HeavyPoly. Okay, thank you.